Good evening, everybody. We're in Parashat Beha'aloscha. It's in Numbers 8, chapter 8, verse 2. You'll have copies in front of you. We'll read the first verse. He doesn't bring down the entire verse. So it's like this. Yidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. Hashem spoke to Moses saying, Daber el Aaron, speak to Aaron, your brother, right? Aaron. V'yimarta olav, and you should speak, say unto him, Beha'aloscha et haneros, when you ignite, when you kindle these lamps, el mul pnei hamenorah, toward the face of the menorah, ya'iru shivat haneros, shall the 7 lamps cast light. Okay, he brings down a few problems. We're already familiar with the Kli Yakar, and he points out problems that you and I probably would not have noticed, or some of the language which is difficult. He right away brings Huksha el Meforshim. You know what really bothered the Meforshim? And you can look in Rashi, I'll read the words first. Me'acha sh'pnei menorah hainu haner emtzai. Im kein haylo lomar yi'iru sheshes haneros. See, Rashi brings this down. El mul pnei menorah, towards the face of the menorah. You're supposed to light it, right, or face it. Towards the face of the menorah. This means el mul ner hamtzai, toward the middle lamp. The middle lamp is called the menorah. So that is very strange, and so a lot of people explain we're talking about the wicks. The wicks face in. Yeah, the middle branch, that's the menorah, and the wicks of the other 3 branches that are on the sides face in. Well, if that's the case, he says, what the Torah should have said then is Ye'iru Sheshus Haneros. It says 7, right? That the 7, as a result, shall the 7 lamps cast light. But if you're talking about the menorah as the middle, and the 3 on each side is casting light, why does it say 7? Only 6 are casting light,
Why is it
towards,
not casting light?
Towards the face of the menorah, because it is the face of the menorah. In other words, if we interpret one of the 7 lamps, as Rashi clearly did, as the face of the menorah, and they're all facing towards that face, they're turned towards that point, so say 6. Interesting. We never would have thought about that. And he has a great answer. It's extremely deep, and it's quite long, and I really hope we get to it. So he says, Lomar shashisha yifnu mul hashvi'i, right? That's what he basically would be saying if everything we said was consistent, that the 6 face towards the 7. V'yomarni, so he begins by saying a few things. Shemaimar, this statement, el mul pnei hamenorah, right, we said is toward the face of the menorah, is koi ashulamala. It's going on what is said above. Here, in this case, you're probably talking about what's said next, and then there's no kash at all, because he's claiming that means we're talking about Aaron himself should face towards the menorah. Look at verse 3. You don't have it, all of you. Yas came, Aaron el mul pnei menorah, and Aaron did. Right? Aaron did exactly like he was told, toward the face of the menorah. Ha'ala neroteha. He rose up the candles, kasher tziv Hashem es Moshe, just like God commanded Moses to tell Aaron. So it sounds like you could really easily resolve the whole problem by saying it's talking about Aaron facing the menorah when he lights it. The problem is we don't see the language of a command throughout these few statements. God didn't command Aaron. Moses didn't command Aaron. God commanded Moses to tell these words to Aaron. I'll read again. Shalom etzinu b'pasuk zeh tzivoy. We don't find in this verse any command. Sharei lo amar. It certainly did not say these words. Tadlikein o ta'aleim el mul pnei menorah. That you shall light them, or you shall raise them towards the face of the menorah. Those words are not used. Tadlikein is command form, you shall light. Ta'aleim, you shall raise up. Those words are not used. But he says also the words yiru, meaning shall the 7 lamps cast light, also eino tzivoy. It's not a language of command. Ki ein tzivu l'neros. Firstly, even if it was, but it's not. You can't command a candle. It's an inanimate object. Has no free will. There's no command here at all. And furthermore, Ma'osh Amar, later on, I just read that verse, that's verse 3, V'yaskein Aaron. And Aaron did so. Aaron did exactly what was commanded. I'll read it again. And Aaron did so toward the face of the menorah. He kindled its lamps as Hashem had commanded Moses. So my Rabuse, what are those words that Aaron did exactly? He did so. What is it coming to add? Mi kamohu mekim davar Hashem. Who is like Aaron who fulfills the words of God? He doesn't go off. He doesn't go astray. Umay shivcho shaloshina. What kind of praise is there to Aaron that he didn't change? We know that Aaron wouldn't change. Mehecha tesi shishane. Where would we even have thought in our wildest dreams that Aaron would change from any kind of command? Elo sharotza kadosh baruch hu. This is going to be the crux of the statement several times over, that God wanted to teach something. God wanted to teach what? Shelo la'ora hu tzarich. God does not need the light. The light was not for God. Okay, we have to explain what that means. It's kind of vague, but that's the main lesson that God wanted to get across. And somehow through this, that lesson is going to be taught, that the light of the menorah was not needed. It was unnecessary. It wasn't needed. Certainly not for God. Mitam zerotza Hashem sheyipnu kulam mul pnei menorah lahotzi milev hatayim. And it's for this reason that God wanted all the wicks facing the middle. Right? If you want to get the maximum amount of light, I'm assuming that you would have had the wicks going out. Right? And you spread the light. Here the wicks are facing towards the center. It's certainly not to spread the light, but this is what God wanted to get across. This reason, God wanted to remove from the hearts of people who will make mistakes by saying God needs the light. By putting the wicks inward, also shows that's not the case. Aval mikol makom lo ratza litzavod al zeh she'adlikein mul pnei menorah. But nevertheless, God did not want to command. There was no command here that they should be lit facing towards the face, turn towards the face of the menorah. Ki lo yita bazeh ki im ish shoget upesi. Because the only type of person that would make a mistake in this anyway is someone who is foolish and just outright wrong, crazy. And now, would it make sense then that on account of certain people who are just crazy, that they're going to go off and have the wrong ideas, yitzav a mitzvah pratit, that there would be a specific command and a specific mitzvah for it? Amar Hashem derech hoda'ah. Rather, what Hashem is doing, He's doing what we call, it's informative. He's letting us know the matzav, the situation. Rather, God is just telling us, in a way, for information purposes. Lo Amar to say, Hineni mudayecha mireshit davar achri davar. What he's actually telling us from the very beginning, he's actually telling us about the conclusion, the end. There's something deep that he wants to get across from us that we should take away with forever. And that is, we're going to find out at the end of 2.5 pages. Beha'aloscha et haneros el mu pnei menorah. Usually, when you kindle the lamps, it has to be towards, or should be towards, the face of the menorah. Ki bezeh lo titein makom l'toi l'tos. Because by doing this, then you're not giving any space, you're not giving any place for people to make this mistake. What was the mistake? By thinking that God needs the light. As af aniyah says zot, I think God's speaking. See, then if you do what I ask you to do, I'm not even commanding you, I'm telling you this is a good prescription for you, then in the end I'm going to do, right, I'm going to sheyiru shiva taneros leolam. I will cause these 7 lamps to light forever. Okay, it's going to be really deep. Lo yitba uram shayu lefanai tami, and shall not become extinguished their lights, right? Basically, don't extinguish them, that they will be before me always. Umiklal hein tishmalah. Now, included in this certainly is an inference to a negative commandment, what we call law, a don't. She'im lo tala osam mu pnei menorah. It's like a warning. If you don't raise them up, facing, right, towards the face of the menorah, v'titei makom l'toim lomar, and you're giving place or space for people to make a mistake by saying what? La'oira ani tzarich, that it's the light that I need. Remember that God does not need that. As lo yiru klal shiva taneros. If you let the world know that God does not need the light, I in turn will cause 7 lights to be lit forever for you.
They're not lit forever, they only lit at night.
1 second. You're right, so far, but he used the word leolam. God's promise was az af aniyah sezot she'iru shiva taneros leolam. So it's already a hint where he's going with this.
To the near coming.
No. But it's a good guess. We'll get to it. Let's hang on. Tighten our
There's no
seatbelts.
mitzvah here.
Yeah, exactly. But if you do this anyway, I will, in return, I am going to cause 7 lights to last forever. That's what he says. I'm just reading the words.
Explain that. Okay.
Yeah, that's right, Hashem. So he says, now if you don't do this, and people think I need the light, as lo yiru klal shivas neros, then as a result, I will, right, then you won't have these 7 lights that will last forever. Heinah you therefore benabayis, right? When you have no temple, you have no candelabra, you have no lights. Hein shekam biyot v'dinyono lo yiru lo yatzir ziv ora, right? And then it also will be in its building. There won't be this light. There won't be this. Let's talk about a yatzir. It's like a bright brilliance of the godly light. Also for me and also for you, it won't be. So what God is saying, if you do this, Aaron HaKohen, and your sons, if you do this, whatever we're about to explain, towards the face of the menorah, which is, let's just say for now, it's the wicks facing in, you're teaching everybody God doesn't need the light. In the end, I'm going to repay you as a reward or as a consequence. Okay, there will be 7 lights forever, and we'll explain. This is like really, we're just laying the groundwork here. V'sir leferush zeh, as an assistant, as help to explain this, mima sha'amru b'medrash, from what they said in the medrash. Sheniskanu haneros lahanuchas hamizbeach. We're right after Parashat Naso. If you go back to Parashat Naso, you have 12 tribal heads bringing gifts to the Mizbeach, to the inauguration of the Mizbeach from day 1, or let's say day 8, Yom HaShmini, which is day 1 of Nisan, through the next 11 days of Nisan, they bring gifts to inaugurate the Mizbeach. So there's a smichut, there's a juxtaposition here, Beha'aloscha, immediately after Parshas Nasa. So he says, Nismuchu haneros, there's this juxtaposition of the candles, or the candelabra, to the inauguration of the altar. Lefi shenitztayir Aaron al shelo haya b'chanuchas hamizbeach. You had 12 tribes. Levi was left out. Aaron at the time was the tribal prince of Levi. And Levi was not asked, right? There was no need, but they were not part of this this giving of gifts and the inauguration of the altar. Amar lo Kadosh Baruch Hu. Now God saw that Aaron was distraught. Ligdula mizu atamuchan hakarbanos einan kiim bizman shebeis hamikdash kayam. Guess what? God's telling Aaron, for greatness, you are prepared. There's good stuff ahead. These korbanos that they all brought, the 12 tribal heads brought,
You're going to bring.
they're only at the time when the temple is standing. V'haneros heim leolam. They will be forever. Remember you asked Moshe, what does it mean leolam? Those lights will be forever. Shneimar, it says, El mul pnei ha-menorah yiru shivus haneros. Right? Toward the face of the menorah shall the 7 lamps cast light. So if you look in the Yilkut, the Nosach Midrashah, in the Medrash, Behebit Yamin Urei, he says to glance to the right and look. In other words, take off your sunglasses and look deeply. My mashma shaneros heim leolam mi pasuk zeh. How do you infer that these candles will be forever from this verse? It's really not clear. Elavadai, certainly, Shabal Medrash Kavanato Lefarish HaPasuk Al Zeh Open. That the author of this Medrash is intent to explain the verse in the following way. Shim Talo Samu Pnei HaMenorah, if you follow what I said, my directions, not commandment, but direction, that if you raise up the light that is going towards the center, Az Esa Yiru Shivas Neros Leolam, then I will make for you, shall cast light of 7 lights forever. Af Bizman HaChorban, even when the temple will be destroyed. And the Ramban is Hiksha Medrash Zeh. The Ramban was bothered by this Medrash. Hooray, Bizman Shar Karbanos B'Telim, Gam Neros B'Telim. When there is no Beis HaMikdash, and you have no korbanos, the truth is you have no candelabra either. Al Kain Perish, therefore it must be talking. Moshe, when it says Leolam, what are we talking about? Sha'al Neros Chashmonayi Uvanav Hu Medaber. We're talking about the candles of the famous Maccabees, of the Hasmoneans, and his sons. That's what we're talking about. The Kashali al Devara. Well, now the Kli Yakar is finding difficulty with the Ramban's explanation. Haregam Neros Chashmonayi. Even if you're talking about the candles of the Hasmoneans, Mitchila Batlu Shneim Ke'echad, VaKarbanos VaNeros. Right? The Greeks had taken over. There was no service really being conducted in the temple. You had both. Not happening. You didn't have the karbanos, nor did you have the candelabra. Kasher nocha shavta aretz, but when the war died down and there was finally peace and quiet, chazru shneim l'kadmusan. Then both, probably at the same time, started up. Right? They both began. You had both karbanos starting and the candelabra being lit. Uma yitaron l'neros ala karbanos. So what advantage do you actually have then from the candles over the offerings, the animal offerings? So he says, Nira Lefaresh, it seems we can explain it in the following way. Shulochat lo raya min chashmonai v'nav sheyesh yoter kedusha b'neros mikarbanot. That you can actually take proof from the Hasmonians themselves that there was a additional holiness in the candles more than the offerings themselves. Sherei b'chazaratan lo nasa shum nes b'karbanos. When they returned to do the offerings, there was no great miracle. There was no sign. There was no, neon sign going on. There was nothing. There was no miracles at the time with the karbanos. But by the neros nasa nes. But we know the famous miracle of finding the one vial that had enough just for one night, lasted an additional 7 days, 7 nights. And al kain kibel Aaron tanchumim al hadlachat haneros. Now we're talking about the conversation that God was having with Aaron by telling him, "You will have candles forever." Right? I know you feel bad right now about not having participated, not given gifts to the inauguration of the altar, but as a consolation prize. I don't know if that's really appropriate to say, but as to help you feel better, I'm giving you an avoda that's actually not a consolation prize at all. It's actually even better than the karbanos, because they are giving something that is temporary, whereas you're giving something that will last the millennium.
I don't understand one part of it, that there's a lot of things about it. When it says the korbanot began on the first day of Nisan, with the first, along with the first of the Shvatim that brought Nachshon ben Aminadab. So he was involved in the korbanot from the very first day. Why was he so upset about it?
He himself, we're talking about as tribes go, they all participated in the actual bringing. In other words, your own sweat, your own tears, your possessions you give over. Levi was not included in that gift giving. And we're only focusing on that. You're right, him and his sons have a great deal to do with the karbanos. But when the karbanos are finished, they're finished. Meaning the temple is destroyed and there's no karbanos. Apparently he did feel left out of his tribe. He was the leader of the tribe of Levi. Levi did not participate in this inauguration for the altar. And that's where we're focusing. You could be right. There's, that would be a consolation, that as long as they're karbanos, he's actively involved, or his children are actively involved. But the fact is that this is how the Midrash brings it down, and we can understand, on one hand, feeling left out, and God does something to bring him back in, but even on a higher level, which is through the menorah.
So the Ramban is the one that brings in the Hashmonai, right?
Yeah, and I think that's, he's not the first one, I don't think he's the only one, I think that's a big part of the drushes. Yeah. It's the Ramban. That's who the Kli Yakar is quoting at the moment. So we go on. Al ken kiva aron tanchumin. Okay, fine. But he's claiming that it's even greater than the karbanos. Umasha amar hakarbanos einan kim bezman shabeis hamikdash kayam. Right, that the karbanos are only in existence when the temple is in existence. Vaneros leolam, whereas the candelabra and the candles are forever. Kach perusho, this is how to explain it. Ha karbanos afal pi shahaya behem eish min hashemayim. Right, maybe this will help you answer the question as well. In the beginning, when the karbanos were first brought, fire came down from heaven. Truth is, it happened during the whole first temple. Vunes nigla umasmid. It was an open miracle, and it was a continuous miracle. So you had fire that came from heaven to consume the offerings on the altar in the first temple, and the tabernacle as well. However, after the destruction of the first temple, shuv lo yorad eish, right? During the second temple, you did not have fire coming down from heaven. Out of the 10 open miracles that happened every day, most of them were missing during the second temple. Included in that which was missing was the fire that came down from heaven.
Got the other 4 there?
No. But think about this, we're talking about fire that comes from heaven, and what we're dealing with now is fire that's coming up from man. We're just focused on these, because that's why he brought them. Dov, you have any questions? But the holiness of the candelabra, the candles, was never removed. They always remained there. Even though that the temple, we call it, both temples were destroyed. The temple was destroyed twice. The first time, or one time at the time of the first temple was Nebuchadnezzar, and now he says which is really Antiochus, which is, we're talking about not even the destruction of the second temple, but a perversion and it was metame, it was not pure. Nevertheless, a miracle occurred with the candelabra. Zemoira al goydel kedusha saneros, and this teaches us, this reflects on the great holiness that the Neros had. Now, I'm not sure if this line actually goes with the previous statement, because I have a different book, a different text that says differently, but let's go on as if it's part of this. And we learn this by necessity from the questions that we learned above. V'nira lo kikach vir katuv. It seems to him, I think he's talking about the Ramban, that you can explain it it can be understood through the explanation of the verse itself. Right? Which means, right, and when you kindle the lamps toward the face of the menorah, shall the 7 lamps shine. Lo titein makom letoim lomar. Remember, we said we don't want to give any place. You shouldn't give any space for people to make a mistake by saying these 3 words. La oira hu tzarich. That the light is for God's needs. That He needs the light. Hine legoy del kedushos haneros ani eseh. The greatness of the holiness of the lamps, I will make this what as a result yiru shivas neros leolam, that they shall shine forth these 7 lights forever. Va'af bizman shelo yeh behem ki'im lahadlik ner echad, even at the time where you won't even have enough to light just only 1 light, which is exactly the story of the Chashmonaim. Hine outside hanes, from the side, from the aspect that there will be a miracle. Ani eseh, I, God, will cause it to happen. She'iru kol shivas haneros b'mei Chashmonaim. I will cause it, the 7 lamps to light, to shine during the days of the Hasmonaim. Zichronam lo yasuf mitoch b'nei Yisrael l'durei duros, and they're mentioning Zichronam, that they will not end. There is no end within the children of Israel for all their generations. This will be remembered forever. Like, and I'll spill the beans, Hanukkah. We celebrate Hanukkah. But you, Aaron, if you end up not raising up the light against or towards the middle branch, Az lo yi'ir le'olam, then there will not be the consequences, the positive consequences of them lighting, igniting, or shining forth forever. Ki lo aseh behem nisim hamufursamim, because I, God, will not create all those miracles, those public miracles. Kedei shelo yimtzu makom l'chazek atam lomar, in order that the people who make these mistakes, will not find a place to strengthen themselves by saying Ba'avor shelo urahu tzarich. The whole concept of menorah is just because we need the light. Therefore God made and created this great open miracle, well known, proclaimed throughout the world, regarding the Neros more than the Karbanos. By the Karbanos there was no great miracle at all. Lefizeh, according to this, Ein b'pasuk zeh shum tzivoy. As Harvey pointed out, in this verse there's no command whatsoever. Or maybe you did, Moshe. Elo hodah dvarim. It was just telling us the facts. Al kein amar l'shivcho shal Aaron. Therefore it comes and tells us the praise of Aaron. What did it say by Aaron in pasuk 3? V'yas ken Aaron. Aaron did. V'yasa ken Aaron el mu pnei menorah, right, towards the face of the menorah. Ala neroseh. He kindled the lamps, just as Hashem commanded Moses. Kasher tziva Hashem es Moses. But Aaron himself was never commanded.
Yes, there was a command out of it. Till now, we've been assuming there was no command.
There was no command to Aaron. Look at the words again.
Even to Moshe.
Only to Moses.
What is it? What's the...
To say these words? I don't know. Just
I
to
don't
say
see
these
it.
words.
I mean, the way he's developed the whole thing, Hashem doesn't tell Moshe that there's a mitzvah either.
Okay, but
there
after the fact...
There is no word of mitzvah in that.
Correct. Except that Hashem commanded Moses to do what? To tell everything here. That's all, just to tell it over. Hashem spoke to Moses saying, speak to Aaron, say to him, when you kindle the lamps with the face of the menorah, so the 7 lamps cast light. Aaron did so. Toward the face of the menorah, he kindled its lamps, as Hashem had commanded Moses. 100%. It's not clear, but he'll address it. Watch what he says now. Al ken amar l'shivko shel Aaron. That's why, therefore, there was this praise told of Aaron. Aaron did so. Ka'asher tziva Hashem. What's the word? Ka'asher. Just as, right? Meaning to say, Ki ilu tziva Hashem es Moshe b'perush. As if God commanded Moses specifically. But it says ka'asher. Just as. Meaning, just as if. Kachaya nizhar b'davar ki ilu nitztav olav. He was so...
When Hashem gives a mitzvah, you can say, Vayas came, okay? In other words, people did what Hashem told them to do. But here, he's using a different terminology that's really not found anywhere else.
Right.
Okay, and that's how he's making the Midrashiah.
Right.
That Kasher Tzivo Hashem, for Moshe to tell him, but not for him to do a certain mitzvah.
Right. So kach hayo nizhar, so that Aaron was careful in this, as if he was commanded on it, even though he wasn't. And afterwards they're going to give a reason exactly from where one would come to make this mistake. This it says, Zeh ma'aseh menorah. Now think about this a second. Zeh ma'aseh menorah means this is the way the menorah is made. This is the craftsmanship or the production, how to produce the menorah. Who made the menorah?
Moshe.
No. No. Kikol klei mishkan nasu aydei adam. All the vessels were made by man. Chutz min ha-menorah. There's one exception. The menorah sa'a HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba'atzmo chatika achas. What happened? Aaron threw the glob of gold into the fire and came out the menorah. He didn't make it. He didn't craft it. Right? I'll read it again. All the vessels of the Mishkan were made by man except for the menorah that Hashem himself made from one glob, one piece. We know it's gold. Kamara sheher Hashem es Moshe kein. Just as, according to the way Hashem showed Moses, kein asa. If you look in the Chumash, it says kein asa, so he did, with a small h, which would imply that Moses made it. But we're going to read it with a big capital H. Kein asa, God made it. Meaning to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu asa. God made the menorah. Mikon yotzamakam l'toim lomar. And from here you can get out of the place. You can exclude the place for these people to make the mistake. Shelachak asa Kadosh Baruch Hu bi'atzmo. So God Himself made the candelabra. What you think? And therefore He needs the light as well. Aken ha'aron mizores lalos neroseh mul pnei menorah levatel tudzeh. Aaron was following the dictates not to allow people to make the mistake, so he followed the, let's say, not the command, but the directive to light it so that the wicks faced inward. It was not for the light, so that people don't think that God needs the light.
There's another raya that He didn't need the light.
From the windows.
He didn't need the light because He let it go out for periods of time.
Okay, but there was always one.
We're talking here about
there was always
olam.
one.
We're really not talking the olam. We're taking the olam to mean a specific point in history.
No.
That is after the Tekufa of the Nevi'im even.
No. I agree with you that part, but not a specific period of time, because we're talking about from that specific time onward, forever.
That's not what happened.
This is why we still light Hanukkah candles.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about, though. We're talking about
hang on.
The 7 lamps and Hashem didn't
What are the
care.
7 lamps? The miracle happens with 7 lamps, not 8. 7 candles.
The miracle happened, but that was a Sha'ah. That was a very temporary thing.
The holiness, the Kedusha is forever. That's what he was explaining.
Yeah, but I mean...
You're right about the miracle happening just 1 week out of the whole history of the world. You're right. I shouldn't have said you weren't right, but in terms of the Kedusha, that's forever. The Yeshomrim, Moshe Shibach et Aaron Shaloshina, from the fact that Aaron was praised because he didn't change. He didn't change from the commands, from the directive. The Fisher Kadosh Baruch Hu Omer Lo. Remember, what did God say to him? El mu pnei menorah yiru shivat haneros. Towards the face of the menorah, the 7 candles will illuminate. Lo hikpid al ha'alah shetiyeh mu pnei menorah. He wasn't concerned of the raising up, that it should be facing the middle. Ki'im ala hera levad. Rather, it was just the appearance alone. Hikpid shetiyeh mu pnei menorah. But, right? Again, it was only the appearance that he made sure to be careful about. That it appeared that it was as if it was facing. V'lo hikpid ala, but not necessarily upon.
The light. Ha'ara is light.
Yeah.
Al he'ara.
The illumination.
Okay, let's read this again. Lo hikpid ala shiteh p'nei mul p'nei menorah. He wasn't careful on the raising up, that it should be towards the middle. Ki'im al ha'ara levad, but only on the light alone he was careful that it should be facing the middle. Lo hikbid Allah, but he wasn't careful on the raising up. The Aaron hoisif also feel all mul pnei menorah, but meaning that was by directive of God and Moses. But Aaron himself added and made sure that even the raising up was in the direction of the menorah. Kamosh ne'emar, as the verse actually says in verse 3, as we just mentioned, that Aaron did this exactly. V'yasa ken Aaron, he did it. El mu pnei menorah leha neota. In the raising up, he did something additional in the actual raising up of the flame. And I want to get through these next 10 lines because this is the most amazing, piece. It says v'yatach elafarish. It's very possible to explain shahashevachu, that this praise afa pisha nemar, even though it says right in chapter 27 of Shmos, of Exodus 27 verse 21, Ya'aroch oto Aaron uvanav, that Aaron and his son shall arrange it. Mekom nizda reis hu levado b'mitzvah. Even though Aaron and his sons were commanded in this mitzvah, guess what? Aaron made sure to be involved himself doing this. Yasa Ken Aaron, and it says Aaron did so. Lefisha Robo Kedusha Yetera. He saw in it, in this mitzvah, this extra holiness. After he saw that God himself made this vessel called the menorah, he saw God do it, he wanted to be involved in the mitzvah even more. And I think, the Cheinkas of Rambam, I think it relates back to the Korbanos with the fire coming out of the sky, fire descending by the hand of God, and fire on the menorah ascending through the hand of man, which we're about to see something really deep. Outside, haremez yesh lefarish. From an aspect of a hint, there is to explain. Elmu penei menorah, towards the face of the menorah, zeh kadosh baruch hu. How do we understand that? If we just said the middle is the face, that's God, Oro shel olam, God is the light of the world. Ye'iru shivas aneros, and its 7 lamps shall cast its light. Now we must be talking about heavy Kabbalistic concepts with the spheres. Ki kol hakanim hayamul hakana emtzai, because each one of the branches face towards the middle branch. V'hu poinei mul hashchina shvamara. So even though we're now talking about the wicks, that the wicks all pointed in, and the branches somehow pointed in, but the middle one pointed west. And what was west? That's where the Holy of Holies was, right? That's where God's presence was. So if they were all pointing in, and the middle was pointing west, it's as if they were all pointing west. You get the idea? If that's the case, it's as if all of them were turned towards facing the menorah, that holy menorah that is pure, or because from it, Hashem, the Holy One, blessed be He is that light that lights up the entire world. All of existence is lit up because of His energy, because of the light that He exudes. Right? We said kindle is aliyah. There's the word ayat, right? Aliyah is part of Beha'aloscha, which means going up. Shiadlik ad shetei shel heves oila leha. That what you do when you light the candle, you hold the candle just a few seconds longer until not just that the wick catches on fire, but that the whole flame goes up to its peak before you remove the shamash, so to speak. So Chazal say, "Shemenorah nasem yaleha," just like the menorah. It says it was made by itself, meaning God made it. That the menorah was created on its own, like not by the hand of man. Zemofek godo sheyesh ba remez al. This is a clear proof, the greatness, a great sign that there's this hint regarding what we call Ner Elokim Nishmas Adam. The candle of God is the soul of man. Ha'olahi lamala me'aleha im ein la monea mitzad avonos. That the soul of man just wants to go up. It's like filled with helium, right? It just wants to go up. It keeps going higher and higher as long as there's nothing preventing it, such as sin. That's the only thing that's going to prevent the soul from keep going up. He mas Hashem. And what is the soul? It was created by God. It was the handiwork of God. Ki shlosha shutfim ba'adam. We learned that there are 3 partners in God. 2 of them are on the earth. That would be the mother and the father. And Hashem is the one that breathed in the Holy Soul. I'll just give a short demonstration. You have the word Adam, Aleph, Daled, Mem. So if you take the word Av and Aim, Av is 3, Aleph, Bet is 3, Aim, that's Aleph, Mem, that's 41, and so you have together 44. That's Dam, but what's the Aleph always represent? The oneness, the unique Hashem combined with the earthly part of man, and that creates man with the soul, with that part of God. Aleph right? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. It's one God. U'kevar biyarnu ze l'malu parshas truma u'inyin nachon u'baror. This is very clear and proper. Ze smichos aliyah neros me'atzmam lamasa menorah. And he brought together this idea of the bringing up of the candle, all, ma'atzmam, to the Maisa menorah, which was also created, let's say, by the hand of God. Ki gam hi hayas ma'asa Hashem. Just like the menorah was the Ma'asa Hashem, the hand of God, the creation of God, so is the soul. Now we understand when it says, Kamosh ne'emar, Kain also es ha-menorah, when it says, Kain also es ha-menorah, we're talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If you look in the book, it has a small H for he, but according to the Kli Yakar, it should be capital H. He created the menorah, he created the soul, which is ever trying to just elevate and go higher and higher, and the only thing that prevents it is mistakes that we make, and we should, Bezrat Hashem, learn more Torah, figure out what these mistakes are, do full tshuva, and have good friends like we have here, and come and learn, and pull each other up.
There's a top down